We've all seen the award stickers on wine bottles and the plaques in the tasting room, but do you ever wonder how these wines actually get these awards? Today, we're at the Intervin wine competition at the White Oaks Resort and Spa in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We're going to get a behind-the-scenes look and see how these wines actually get judged and what it means for the winning wines. So follow me, let's go inside and see what's happening. Oh, look at all this wine. Oh my God, I think I'm in wine heaven. The judges definitely have their work cut out for them. It's gonna be a good day. So we're talking with Christopher Waters, the editor and co-founder of Vines magazine. Christopher is also one of the lead organizers and the head judge here at Intervin. Christopher, it's a pleasure to see you again, and thank you for talking with us today. So Christopher, what makes Intervin wine competition different than some of the other wine competitions that we see here in Canada, such as Cuvée or the Ontario Wine Awards or the Canadian Wine Awards?
Well, the whole idea for Intervin, I mean, we actually revived pre-existing competition, but the inter part of it, it's an international competition, so it's taking a look at Canadian wines, but also in a context with what else is available. So when our judges see a panel of a flight of wines, they're seeing wines from around the world. So it's looking at it in a context that's global. So it really is a measuring stick for how the wines locally kind of measure up to what's coming into our market and what's being made in other parts of the world.
What can you walk us through basically, like, how does wine get judged from that judge sitting there with their 1 or 2 ounce sample of the wine, and how they score it and how that score eventually may turn into a medal, and just basically how the whole process works?
Effectively, they're looking at these wines on a 20-point scale system, 18, 19, 20 being a gold medal threshold, and 13 kind of being the no medal threshold. And so they're coming up with an idea and putting a number to the wine, but then talking about it, and as a group, kind of, so someone may have found something, because inevitably in a 14 or a 10 wine flight, you might miss something that someone else picks up on there. Sometimes those wines that only whisper as opposed to shout, it takes somebody, kind of championing them a little bit.
So Zoltan, when you're judging at a wine competition, do you have sort of a strategy or an angle? Like, do you just kind of focus on the aroma first, color first, or do you always kind of go back and forth from the wines? Or what's your kind of strategy, and what are you looking for when you're judging or scoring a wine?
Very well. Well, obviously, I'm looking for a varietal character. Pinot Noir should smell and taste like Pinot Noir. Otherwise, if it starts smelling and tasting like Cabernet Franc, let's say, you got to fire the winemaker. I'm looking for varietal character, regional character. Wine to be made, with integrity, to be clean, no faults, obviously. To be, clean, faultless, and so forth and so on. Obviously, consumer appeal, price, it's a factor as well, but much less than, as I said earlier, varietal and regional character.
That's what's neat about the panels at Intervin is each panel has a winemaker on it and a sommelier and someone else from the wine industry. So we're all bringing something different to the table, but ultimately we all have the same goal of picking out the wines that are superior to the rest of the flight. So, in the end, it still comes down to what had the best aroma, what had the best palate, which finish had the best length. I guess what I can do is bring different things to the conversation and see things in certain varietals that someone else may not see. But then, a sommelier is going to bring a different point of view to it as well. So it's not like mine's more correct, so I'm the winemaker. I just bring a little bit of different conversations at the table.
As a sommelier, part of your job, I mean, whether it's you're working at a restaurant or making wine lists for different companies or hotels and things like that, you're always looking for wines that are maybe, good with certain foods. So you're thinking about food pairing, you're thinking about stemware, temperature of serving the wine. How does that sort of differ when you're choosing those types of wines when you're sitting here in an atmosphere where all the wines are kind of similar stemware, similar temperature? And is there a difference when you're sort of judging a wine in a judging competition as opposed to picking a wine that you would suggest for someone to eat with their meal or to be on a wine list?
Actually, it all goes hand in hand, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm also looking at a wine when I'm tasting it, from an angle. Would I buy this wine for my clients? Any restaurants or hotels that I represent or I purchase wines on their behalf, would I buy, this particular wine for them? Would we be able to sell this wine? Would this wine work with the cuisine, with the food, as you're saying, these establishments, restaurants, whatnot? I'm looking at a wine from all these perspectives, obviously.
So what is the relevance then, you think, for maybe whether they're Vines readers or people who are just shopping at the LCBO when they see these stickers or they hear about the awards for these wines? What do you think it does for the winery or for the wines?
I think it's a really good barometer as to, our catchphrase for Intervin has always been kind of searching for excellence in winemaking. And we set it up such that our panels are made up of a winemaker. There's people from different parts of the wine culture. There's a winemaker, there's a sommelier, there's someone who's an educator or a wine journalist, and they taste independently and then turn their chairs in and they submit a group consensus for that wine. And so it's taking a look at a wine not just from this is what I think about it. It's so you have a winemaker saying, well, I see it from this side. Sommelier, this is something I could definitely sell to people. Wine writer or educator, seeing everyone kind of learns, and so it's a great, I guess, gauge for what makes a good quality wine or an exceptional quality wine, but also what I find that the subtext of it is we're building a wine culture because the people who are in there are learning from each other about what their roles are and what they do and what they have to say about each of their wines and what they do. So it's a great kind of nice little cross-pollination in there that the benefit is that consumers get a wine that's kind of been battle tested, that it's been put through its paces, and so that sticker really is an emblem of quality.
As a winemaker and a proprietor of a winery, how important are these competitions for people who have wines entered and wines that actually win some of the medals, and what does it do for these wines?
That's a great question, because I think actually sometimes as the wineries we do a poor job sometimes of promoting the wines that we win. I think it just helps the winemaker's ego a little bit. It helps the winery to know that they're on the right track. They're doing something that is viewed as favorable by a wide range of people, as well as what we have here as the Intervin panels. But also too, it just brings notoriety to the wines in general. So it's nice to see. That's what's neat about Intervin, is that the wines here are international. So it's one of the only competitions in Canada that we have like this. So you can come up with a medal in Riesling, for instance, and say, all right, we went up against the best from the rest of the world and achieved.
Well, I think, considering the people that are involved with this competition, some of the finest palates, from Ontario, I think we do have an obligation towards, the winemaker, the wineries that, submit their wines for this competition, but also an obligation towards the consumer. So obviously we're here in between, the winemaker and the consumer, offering a bridge, if I may, and selecting nothing but the best wines, for the consumer, to make the selection process for the consumer much easier. I mean, if you see the logo with the, Interven logo on a bottle when results gonna be released, that's a pretty good goddamn guarantee that the wine is gonna be, pretty good. I mean, it's assessed by, 14 or 15, great tasters. We offering some sort of a guarantee to the consumer that the wines it's much enjoyable.
As a judge, when you're going through these wines and you're tasting so many different wines in one day, how do you deal with things like palate fatigue or sort of trying to focus on one wine and not comparing maybe that wine to the wine that you just previously tasted?
It is a challenge sometimes, and it is about keeping your mind fresh and always cleansing your palate as well, using lots of bread and lots of water. It's amazing how much bread you go through while you're judging wines. And also, too, you do feel yourself going through a little bit of fatigue and stuff, so it's kind of nice just kind of mark which wines you were feeling that way on and make sure you get back to it later on when you're feeling a little fresh and a little more revived.
I noticed there's also a Winery of the Year award going out. How does that award get awarded, and how do you determine the winner for that?
It's the second year for Winery of the Year, and the idea is really that wineries who put in 6 entries, at least, that we have a data set to take a look at who had consistently scored high in our judges' opinion, and taking a look at the kind of overall top marks from those. And so last year it was a nice mix. We had 6 Canadian properties, 4 international properties. We'll see where we land this year. BC entries are way up, Ontario entries are way up as we have nice newcomers coming to the table, some of the people that you've been covering in the last couple of weeks.
How can our viewers and our Ontario wine consumers find out how the wines did and who wins the medals?
We will have there's a special issue of Vines coming out at the last week of October. The last couple of years we've just put we've collected the results in our holiday issue. This year we wanted to get things out a bit earlier, just to make sure that wines are still widely available, and also that we could celebrate them, that it was worthy of its own special issue. So we're doing a 7th issue of Vines, which is more work on top, but it's totally worth it in the sense that we've got so much to talk about because of the excitement that generates out of these 3 days of tasting. Yeah.